She thought it was just another late-night Uber ride in Las Vegas. But when the passenger stepped in, her heart nearly stopped. It was him. The millionaire CEO who once shattered her soul and left her raising twins alone. What happens next will leave you speechless. Before I begin the story, I'd like to say a quick prayer for you, my dear family. May your days be filled with peace, your heart with joy, and your steps guided by light. Amen. If you're happy to be here, drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from. And don't forget to like and subscribe so you never miss a story. Las Vegas shimmered like a restless mirage against the desert sky. The Strip blazed with neon promises, each hotel a cathedral of excess, every billboard a shrine to fleeting pleasures. But for Isabella Bella Cruz, the city's dazzling lights had long ago lost their magic. Her Toyota Camry hummed steadily beneath her hands as she maneuvered through the Friday night chaos. She had been driving Uber for almost 3 years, ever since her life had unraveled in ways she still struggled to explain even to herself. Tonight, her shift had already stretched past 10 hours, and the ache in her back warned her it might become 12. The air smelled faintly of stale fries from the fast food bag tossed on the passenger floor. A small lavender air freshener dangled from the rearview mirror, its calming scent almost overpowered by the heavy perfume of the casino-goers she ferried back and forth. Her phone chimed, a new request. Pick up the Bellagio. Passenger unknown. Destination pending. Bella sighed and tapped accept. The Bellagio again. Drunk tourists in sequins and rented tuxedos. She steeled herself for the possibility of another round of slurred jokes and unwanted advances. Her worn hands tightened around the steering wheel, the knuckles whitening. Just 2 more rides, she murmured. Then I can call it a night. She pulled into the hotel's valet circle, headlights bouncing against polished marble and glass. People poured out of the entrance, laughter, shouting, drunken giggles. A group of women in glittering dresses teetered on impossible heels, clutching cocktails. A family wrangled excited children buzzing on soda and excitement. Then she saw him, tall, broad-shouldered, sharp suit in midnight blue, tailored so perfectly it moved like second skin. His stride was unhurried, almost regal, as if the chaos around him bent to his rhythm instead of the other way around. For a moment, Bella's breath caught. The face illuminated under the hotel's golden lights was one she knew all too well. Adrian Knight. The name roared in her head like thunder rolling across the desert. He was the man who had shattered her heart 6 years ago. The man she had once believed was her forever. The man she had loved with every fiber of her being, only to be left in silence, abandoned without explanation. And the father of her twins, though he didn't know it. Bella's fingers clenched the steering wheel, so tightly her knuckles burned. This couldn't be real. She blinked, convinced the exhaustion of her shift was playing tricks. But no, it was him. His jet black hair swept back neatly, his chiseled jaw, just as she remembered, though more defined now, more mature. There was something heavier about him, too. A gravity in his posture, a cool control in his expression. 6 years had turned the man she loved into someone even more striking and more untouchable. Please don't let it be him, Bella whispered. But fate, cruel and unrelenting, had other plans. Adrian's gaze swept the row of waiting cars, then locked onto hers. Recognition didn't flicker across his face. Not yet. He opened her back door with smooth precision and slid inside. Good evening. His voice rumbled low and controlled. The sound of it crashed into Bella like a wave. The same voice that had whispered promises in the dark. The same voice that had once told her she was as only as always. She swallowed hard, forcing composure. Good evening, she said, her tone clipped, professional. Where to? He leaned forward slightly, his cologne, cedarwood leather, something expensive and unforgettable, filling the car. He handed her a black business card, embossed with silver lettering. Knight Enterprises. His name gleamed across the card, beneath the title Chief Executive Officer. Skyline Towers, he said. His voice carried the kind of authority that invited no argument. Bella's stomach dropped. Skyline Towers was one of the most exclusive residences in Las Vegas, a fortress of glass and steel that pierced the night sky. She had seen it countless times, ferrying wealthy tourists to its rooftop bar. She pulled away from the Bellagio, her eyes fixed firmly on the road ahead. Her pulse thundered in her ears. 6 years. 6 years since the night everything collapsed. 6 years since she last saw his face. And now here he was, in the back seat of her car, close enough that she could feel the weight of his presence pressing against her spine. The silence between them stretched taut. Bella prayed he wouldn't recognize her. Maybe he'd glance at her in the mirror and see only another Uber driver, another anonymous face in the city that thrived on anonymity. But Las Vegas had a cruel sense of humor. Halfway down the strip, his voice cut through the quiet. Bella? The sound of her name in his mouth made her grip the wheel tighter. She didn't answer, not at first. Denial was easier, safer. But the silence betrayed her. He leaned forward, his sharp eyes catching hers in the rearview mirror. The faintest hint of surprise softened his otherwise composed expression. It is you. Her chest constricted. Please, she said softly. Don't. He sat back slowly, studying her. The man who once knew every secret of her soul now looked at her like she was a puzzle he couldn't quite piece together. The car rolled past neon palaces, slot machines glowing from open doorways, drunken laughter echoing through the night. But inside, the silence returned, thick, suffocating, charged. Bella's mind reeled. Why now? Why him? Why, after years of building walls around her broken heart, did fate decide tonight was the night to tear them down? As she drove, memories clawed their way back. Stolen kisses under desert skies, whispered dreams of forever. The night he walked away without a word. And the months that followed, months of tears, of shame, of discovering she was carrying his children alone. Her twins, her entire world. Adrian didn't know they existed. And sitting here now, his gaze burning into her through the rearview mirror, Bella vowed he never would. The city blurred past, neon bleeding into streaks of gold and crimson against the desert night. Bella's hands were steady on the wheel, but inside, she was unraveling. Every muscle in her body screamed at her to breathe, to calm down, but the air felt thick, unyielding. Adrian Knight, even thinking his name made her stomach twist. He was a ghost she had buried long ago, sealed away in a box labeled never again. Yet here he was sitting in her back seat, alive, real, close enough for her to see the faint scar above his eyebrow, the one she used to trace with her lips on nights that belonged only to them. Bella, he said again, slower this time, as though tasting the word, reacquainting himself with the shape of her name. I thought it couldn't be you. And yet, his voice trailed off. She gritted her teeth. People change. Maybe I'm not who you think I am. But the bitter edge in her voice betrayed her. Adrian chuckled, low and humorless, still deflecting, still hiding behind walls. She tightened her grip on the steering wheel. He had no right to sound so familiar, to pretend like he still knew her. Funny, she said flatly, coming from the man who disappeared without a word. The silence that followed was heavier than the desert heat. Adrian leaned back, his silhouette framed by the flashing lights outside. You are right, he said finally. I owe you more than silence. Her throat ached at his calm confession. She wanted to scream, to demand answers, to tell him about the nights she cried until her pillow was soaked. But her children's faces floated before her mind's eye, Elena and Elias, their laughter, their small hands reaching for hers. She couldn't let him in. Not now. Not ever. The Camry rolled past the Mirage, its artificial volcano erupting fire into the night sky. The roar filled the silence, masking the pounding of Bella's heart. Adrian's gaze never left her. She could feel it like a hand pressed against the back of her neck. "You look different," he murmured. She almost laughed. "Of course I do." 6 years of raising twins alone had carved new lines into her face, new steel into her spine. She wasn't the wide-eyed 23-year-old he'd left behind. "You look the same," she said instead, her tone sharp as glass. "Just older. Richer, I guess." He didn't flinch. "Old, yes. Richer, maybe, but not the same." Bella refused to bite. She fixed her eyes on the road, on the endless stream of headlights and taillights. Adrian shifted in his seat, restless now. "Why are you driving Uber?" The question hit her like a slap. She bit down on her tongue, fury sparking in her chest. He asked it so casually, as if the years hadn't passed, as if he had the right to inquire about her life. "Because life isn't always rooftop bars and penthouse suites," she snapped. "Some of us actually have to work." He didn't answer. She risked a glance in the mirror and saw something unexpected flicker across his face. Not arrogance, not pity, but regret. The kind of regret that sat heavy, like an anchor tied to the soul. Bella forced her eyes back to the road. She couldn't let herself be fooled again. The car ascended the incline toward Skyline Towers, its glass walls gleaming like a crown against the night sky. She had always hated this building, hated the way it seemed to watch over the city like a sentinel of power and privilege. She pulled into the circular drive, stopping beneath the arched entrance. The uniformed doorman stepped forward, but Adrian lifted a hand, dismissing him. "Wait," Adrian said as she reached for the door lock. "Don't leave yet." Bella's pulse quickened. "The ride's over. We're done." His eyes burned into hers in the mirror, unwavering. "We're not done. Not yet." Something inside her cracked at his words. For 6 years she had dreamed of hearing them, of him returning, begging for another chance. But dreams had no place in her life anymore. Not when she had 2 children depending on her. She unlocked the door with a sharp click. "Good night, Adrian." He hesitated, his hand on the door handle, his gaze still locked on hers. For a moment she saw the man she used to know, the one who kissed her under desert stars, who whispered about building a future together. Then he was gone, stepping into the glittering lobby without another word. Bella sat frozen, her hands trembling against the steering wheel. The door shut with a soft thud that echoed louder than a gunshot in her chest. Her phone buzzed, another ride request. She declined. She couldn't take another passenger tonight, not with her heart thundering like this. She drove aimlessly, the city lights blurring through tears she refused to let fall. She wound up at a quiet overlook on the edge of town, the strip glowing in the distance like a false promise. Bella cut the engine and rested her head against the steering wheel. 6 years. 6 years of silence. 6 years of raising 2 children alone. And now he was back. She closed her eyes and saw their faces. Elena with her curious dark eyes, Elias with his mischievous grin. Both carried traces of Adrian. The dimpled smile, the sharp cheekbones. The same deep gaze that once made Bella believe in forever. Her chest ached. She had vowed to keep them safe from him, from the chaos he carried. But tonight had reminded her of a truth she couldn't escape. The past had a way of circling back, no matter how hard you try to outrun it. Meanwhile, inside Skyline Towers, Adrian stood at the window of his penthouse, staring down at the city. He couldn't shake the image of her. Bella, the woman he had left behind, the woman who had once been his everything. She was supposed to be gone from his life, a closed chapter. But seeing her again tonight, it had ripped open wounds he thought were long healed. Her eyes haunted him, sharp with anger, but shadowed by something deeper. Something she wasn't saying. He poured himself a glass of whiskey, but it did nothing to steady his hands. Why was she driving Uber? Why did she look both stronger and more fragile than he remembered? And why did he feel as though he had lost her all over again? And truthfully, he had never stopped missing her. Adrian's reflection stared back at him from the glass. A man who had everything. Power, wealth, influence. But none of it filled the hollow space Bella had once occupied. He downed the whiskey in one swallow. He had spent 6 years convincing himself he did the right thing by leaving. That walking away had been the only way to protect her from the mess his life had become. But seeing her again tonight, he wasn't so sure anymore. Back at her small apartment, Bella slipped quietly inside, careful not to wake the twins. The living room was cluttered with toys, dolls, building blocks, coloring books. Their drawings covered the fridge, crayon stick figures smiling beneath crooked suns. She paused in the doorway to their bedroom. Elena and Elias slept side by side, their breath soft, steady. Elena clutched a stuffed bunny. Elias sprawled across his blanket, mouth open. One hand stretched toward his sister as though protecting her even in dreams. Bella's throat tightened. She brushed hair from Elena's forehead, then kissed Elias's cheek. "You're my everything," she whispered. "And no one, not even him, will change that." But as she stood watching them, a chill ran down her spine, because deep down she knew the truth. Adrian Knight wasn't gone. He was back in her orbit now, and there was no way this story would end without him finding out the secret she had guarded for 6 long years. The next morning, Bella moved like a machine. She rose at 6, made pancakes for the twins, packed their lunches, and walked them to school. She smiled when they hugged her goodbye, waved until they vanished inside the red brick building, and then turned back toward her car. Her smile faded the moment their small faces disappeared from view. Her phone buzzed with ride requests. She ignored them. Today, she couldn't face strangers' drunken laughter or business chatter. Today, she needed quiet. But Las Vegas rarely gave anyone peace. At a nearby cafe, she ordered a black coffee and sat by the window, staring blankly at the traffic rolling down Flamingo Road. She told herself she had imagined last night that Adrian Knight hadn't actually sat in her back seat, that his voice hadn't slid over her skin like a haunting. But the truth wouldn't bend. He was here, back in her city, back in her life. The barista's cheerful chatter faded to static as Bella's thoughts swirled. Why was he in Vegas? Why now? He had always belonged to a world of boardrooms and penthouses, not rideshare backseats and small apartments cluttered with toys. She took a bitter sip of coffee, forcing her hands to stay steady. No matter the reason, he couldn't find out about the twins. He didn't deserve to. Across town, Adrian's morning was anything but steady. He stood in his penthouse kitchen, an untouched breakfast spread before him. Toast, eggs, fresh fruit. He had barely eaten in days, his appetite drowned by restless thoughts. Bella. The name lingered on his tongue, sweet and dangerous. He had thought of her countless times over the years, in quiet moments when success felt hollow, when boardroom victories left him cold. But the memories had always been easy to bury under contracts and expansion plans. Not anymore. Now, every detail of her return burned bright. The way her hair curled around her face, wilder than he remembered. The defiance in her voice when she snapped at him. The sadness in her eyes she tried to hide. He had left her for a reason he still believed was right, at least on paper. 6 years ago, his world had been chaos. Legal battles, threats from rivals, a father who resurfaced only to drag him into scandal. Adrian had walked away from Bella to protect her from the storm that was consuming him. He told himself it was noble, that leaving had saved her. But last night, watching her drive away, he realized he might have saved her from nothing. Maybe all he had done was break her heart and condemn himself to emptiness. Adrian pushed his plate aside. He had built an empire brick by brick, but no success erased the hollow ache where she used to be. For the first time in years, Adrian Knight found himself hesitating over a decision. Not about a merger, Not about a multi-million-dollar investment, but about a woman, about Bella. That afternoon, Bella picked up the twins from school. Elena skipped ahead, holding her stuffed bunny in one hand. Elias lagged behind, fascinated by an ant trail on the sidewalk. Bella called out, "Come on, buddy, you gotta get home." He ran to catch up, his backpack bouncing. "Mama, can we get ice cream?" She ruffled his hair. "Maybe this weekend." Elena pouted dramatically. "That's forever." Bella laughed despite herself. For a few moments, the world felt normal, safe, until she saw the sleek black car parked across the street. A tinted-windowed luxury sedan. The kind of car she knew all too well. Her chest tightened. She grabbed her children's hands, hurrying them along. She didn't dare look too closely, but she didn't need to. Some instinct told her who was inside. Adrian, watching. Her pulse raced as she ushered the twins into her apartment building. She glanced over her shoulder, but the car pulled away smoothly, disappearing into traffic. She closed the apartment door behind her, locking it with shaking fingers. "Why now?" she whispered to the empty air. Elena tugged her sleeve. "Mama? What's wrong?" Bella forced a smile. "Nothing, sweetheart. Just tired." But her hands wouldn't stop trembling. That evening, Adrian sat alone in his office, the city glittering below. His assistant, Daniel, placed a stack of reports on his desk, but Adrian barely looked up. "You're distracted?" Daniel observed. Adrian raised an eyebrow. "You think so?" "I know so," Daniel said. He had worked with Adrian for nearly a decade, long enough to notice cracks in his otherwise impenetrable armor. "What's her name?" Adrian's jaw tightened. "Excuse me." Daniel smirked. "Whenever you're like this, it's always a woman." Adrian didn't reply. Instead, he turned toward the window, watching the endless churn of neon and headlights. "Her name is Bella," he said finally, his voice low. Daniel whistled softly. "The one from before? The one you never talk about?" Adrian's silence was answer enough. "Careful, Adrian," Daniel said. "Some ghosts are better left in the past." Adrian's eyes narrowed. "She's not a ghost. She's real. And she's here." Back in her apartment, Bella tucked the twins into bed. They drifted quickly into dreams, their small faces soft in the glow of the nightlight. She lingered, brushing a curl from Elena's forehead, listening to Elias's gentle snores. They were her world, her reason, her strength, and the secret she had sworn to protect. She walked to the living room, pouring herself a glass of water, but the sound of a knock at the door froze her in place. Her heart leapt into her throat. No one knocked at this hour. She set the glass down carefully, silently crossing the room. Another knock. Firm, measured, familiar. Bella pressed her palm against the door. Her breath caught. "Bella," a voice called softly. "Adrian." Her knees weakened, fury and longing colliding inside her chest. She gripped the doorframe, torn between opening it and pretending she wasn't home. But deep down she knew there was no hiding forever. Not from Adrianite. The knock echoed through the small apartment, steady as a drumbeat. Bella's chest tightened with every sound. The twins slept peacefully in the next room, unaware that the man who haunted her past was standing only feet away. Her breath trembled as she pressed her forehead against the door. Maybe if she stayed quiet, he would leave. Maybe this was just a nightmare, and she would wake to find the hallway empty. But then his voice came again, low, controlled, unshakable. "Bella, I know you're there. Please open the door." Her fingers dug into the wood. Rage flared inside her, white-hot and bitter. How dare? After everything, after 6 years of silence, he thought he could simply appear and demand her attention? She closed her eyes. "Don't open it. Don't let him in." But the longer she stood there, the more she realized Adrianite wasn't the kind of man who gave up. If she didn't open the door tonight, He'd be back tomorrow. And the next day, until she faced him, with shaking hands, she unlatched the lock and pulled the door open just enough to see him. There he was. Adrian stood in the dim hallway, his suit jacket gone, his shirt sleeves rolled up. His hair was slightly disheveled, like he had run his fingers through it 100 times. His dark eyes met hers, filled with something she couldn't read. "Bella," he said softly, almost like a prayer. She kept her grip firm on the door, blocking his entry. "He shouldn't be here. I had to see you." "Well, you've seen me," she snapped. "Now go." But he didn't move. His gaze searched her face, lingering on the tension in her jaw, the tiredness in her eyes. He noticed everything he always had. "You look different," he said finally. 6 years will do that to a person. His expression tightened. 6 years, he repeated, the weight of it hanging in the air. Bella's heart pounded so loudly, she worried he might hear it. She needed to end this. Quickly. "My children are sleeping," she said, her voice sharp. "Leave before you wake them." Something flickered across his face. Surprise, confusion. "Your children?" Her stomach dropped. She hadn't meant to reveal that. Panic surged, but she forced her features to remain unreadable. "Yes," she said coldly. "My children. Now go." But Adrian didn't go. His sharp mind was already working, connecting dots she had prayed would stay scattered. "You never mentioned." "Because it's none of your business." He took a small step forward, and she immediately blocked him with the door. His jaw tightened, but he didn't push. "I'm not leaving like this," he said quietly. "You don't get to decide that anymore." For a moment, their eyes locked, hers blazing with fury, his shadowed with something deeper. Regret? Longing? She didn't dare believe it. Finally, Adrian exhaled slowly, stepping back. "Fine. Not tonight. But this isn't over, Bella." She slammed the door before he could say more, her whole body trembling. She leaned against the wood, listening to his footsteps retreat down the hall. Only then did she let the tears fall. Adrian walked to his car, every step heavy. Children. The word rang in his mind like an alarm. She had children. He replayed every detail of her face, the exhaustion, the protective fire in her eyes. A mother's fire. Could they be hers with someone else? The thought made his stomach twist, and yet something inside him resisted the idea. 6 years. The timeline scratched at him, relentless. Adrian slid into the back of his sedan, his driver glancing at him in the mirror. "Home, sir?" "No," Adrian said, his voice low. "Drive." The city blurred past outside the tinted windows, but he barely saw it. For the first time in years, Adrian Knight didn't feel in control. Back in her apartment, Bella sat at the edge of her bed, staring at the twins' closed bedroom door. Her children were everything, her reason for breathing. She had built their world on lies of omission, carefully shielding them from the truth of their father. And now that truth was pounding at her door. She thought of Elena's curious eyes, Elias's quiet brilliance. How long could she keep their secret safe? Her phone buzzed with a new message. She picked it up with trembling hands. "Unknown number. This isn't over. We need to talk. Tomorrow." Her stomach clenched. "Adrian." She deleted the message immediately, but the words burned in her mind long after the screen went dark. The next morning, Bella dropped the twins at school and tried to return to her routine. She accepted ride requests, ferried tourists across the strip, smiled when she had to, stayed silent when she could. But she felt his shadow everywhere. Every sleek car she passed, every sharp-dressed man in a crowd, every glance in her rearview mirror. She expected it to be him. By midday, her nerves were frayed. She pulled into a quiet gas station, resting her head on the steering wheel. Her phone buzzed again. This time, she didn't need to look. She knew it was him. She wanted to ignore it. She should ignore it. But some part of her knew. Adrian Knight didn't let go. Not of business. Not of people. Not of her. And as much as she hated it, a part of her wasn't sure she wanted him to. Adrian wasn't used to waiting. In the boardroom, people bent to his decisions. In negotiations, silence was his weapon. But when it came to Bella Cruz, he found himself pacing the length of his penthouse, his mind spinning with questions he couldn't shake. She had children. The words wouldn't leave him. They clung to his thoughts, sharper than any deal gone wrong, heavier than any failed investment. He tried to tell himself it wasn't his concern. Bella's life was her own. 6 years had passed, 6 years of distance, silence. Choices made separately. She didn't owe him answers. But still, he couldn't let it go. The image of her standing in that doorway, protective and fierce, replayed in his mind. There had been a tremor in her voice when she mentioned the children, a hesitation that hinted at more than she wanted to admit. Children, plural. The math pressed against him like a blade. 6 years. Twins. Adrian stopped pacing, staring out at the Las Vegas skyline, its glass towers gleaming like poker chips under the desert sun. He had to know. The next day, he called Daniel into his office. "I need information," Adrian said, his voice sharp. Daniel arched an eyebrow. "On who?" "Bella Cruz. Everything. Where she works, where she lives, who she spent time with." Daniel leaned against the desk, arms crossed. "You realize how this sounds, right? Like obsession." Adrian shot him a look. "It's business." Daniel smirked. "Right. The kind of business that keeps you up at night." "Just do it," Adrian said, his tone brooking no argument. Daniel sighed, but nodded. "Fine. Give me a few days." "Hours," Adrian corrected. Daniel shook his head as he left. "God help me. You're worse with her than you are with billion-dollar contracts." Meanwhile, Bella tried desperately to focus on her routine. After work, she picked up the twins and took them to a nearby park. Elena chased butterflies, her laughter ringing through the air. Elias sat quietly with his sketchbook, drawing the playground in neat, precise lines. Bella sat on a bench, watching them with a bittersweet smile. They were her heart, her reason. And yet, every time she looked at them, she saw him. Elena's sharp jawline, Elias's intense eyes, echoes of Adrian she could never erase. She rubbed her temples. Don't think about him. Don't let him in. But the memory of his knock, his voice, his stare in the dark hallway, it was all too fresh. "Mommy," Elena called, running over with flushed cheeks. "Can we get pizza tonight?" Bella forced a smile. "Sure, sweetheart." As Elena dashed away, Bella's phone buzzed. A number she didn't recognize lit up the screen. She hesitated before answering. "Hello?" Silence. Then a voice she knew too well. "Why didn't you tell me?" Her stomach flipped. "Adrian, stop calling me." "I need to know," he pressed, his voice low and urgent. "Are they mine?" The world seemed to tilt. Bella glanced at her children, her throat tightening. "This conversation is over," she snapped, hanging up. Her hand shook as she shoved the phone back into her pocket. That night, Adrian sat at his desk, staring at the file Daniel had delivered. "Bella Cruz," Daniel began, flipping open the folder. "Age 29. Works rideshare. Part-time waitress gigs before that. Lives in East Vegas, small apartment complex. Neighbors describe her as quiet, hardworking. 2 kids, twins, boy and girl. Ages 5. Adrian's chest tightened. 5. Daniel continued, but Adrian barely heard him. His eyes locked on the photographs clipped to the report. Bella walking the children to school, their small hands clasped in hers. The boy had Adrian's eyes. The girl had his smile. Adrian swallowed hard, closing the folder. "Say something," Daniel said quietly. Adrian leaned back in his chair, his expression unreadable. "They're mine." Daniel hesitated. "You don't know that for sure." "I do." Adrian's voice was steel. "I can see it." Back in her apartment, Bella tucked the twins into bed. Elena yawned. Mom, will we ever meet Daddy? Bella froze. Her heart stuttered painfully. Why do you ask that? Other kids at school have daddies, Elena said sleepily. They come to pick them up. I just wondered. Bella smoothed her daughter's hair, forcing her voice to stay calm. You have me, and I'm enough. Elena nodded, already drifting into dreams. But Bella sat awake long after, staring into the dark. Adrian was too close now, too determined. And she knew the truth couldn't stay hidden much longer. The next morning, Adrian stood outside Bella's apartment building. He had never been a man who begged, but tonight he was ready to. When she opened the door and saw him standing there, her face went pale. We need to talk, he said simply. Her grip tightened on the frame. There's nothing to say. Yes, there is, he said firmly. I need the truth. Are they mine? Bella's throat went dry. Her heart thundered so loudly she thought the whole building might hear it. She didn't answer, and her silence was an answer all its own. The silence stretched between them, heavy and suffocating. Adrian's gaze locked on Bella, searching, pleading, demanding. He had faced hostile boards, ruthless rivals, and billion-dollar negotiations, but none of it compared to this moment. Bella, he said softly, almost a whisper. Please. Her throat tightened. She had promised herself she would never let this happen, never let him back in. But the truth had a way of clawing its way out, no matter how deeply buried. They're mine, she said finally, her voice breaking. Adrian inhaled sharply, as though the words had struck him physically. His shoulders, always squared with control, sagged under the weight of the revelation. He closed his eyes for a moment. When they opened again, they gleamed with something raw. Why didn't you tell me? Bella's chest heaved. Because you left me, Adrian. You left me standing in the ruins of everything we built. And I had nothing but them. Her voice cracked on the last word, but she didn't flinch. The dam had broken, and years of silence flooded out. You don't get to disappear, break me in half, and then come back like some kind of savior asking questions you don't deserve answers to. Adrian stepped closer, pain etched across his face. I didn't know, Bella. If I had. If you had what? She cut in, her eyes flashing. If you had known, you would have stayed. You would have chosen me over your empire, your reputation, your perfect little world. His jaw tightened. Yes. The certainty in his tone stunned her. For a moment she couldn't breathe. But then the bitterness surged back. Don't lie to me, Adrian. You were already halfway out the door when I told you I loved you. You wanted control, not commitment. Adrian's voice dropped low, gravelly with regret. I was a coward. I let fear win. But I swear to you, Bella, if I had known about them, about our children, nothing in this world would have kept me away. Bella's eyes filled, but she blinked the tears back. She couldn't let herself believe him. Not yet. You don't know what it's been like, she said, her voice trembling now. Working double shifts, counting pennies, praying every day that I could keep the lights on, that I could put food on the table. And all the while, looking into their faces and seeing you. Every day, Adrian. Every damn day. Her words were knives, but Adrian took them without flinching. He deserved them. He knew it. I'm sorry, he said finally, the words stark and simple. I can't undo the past, but I want to be here now. I want to know them. I want to know you again. Bella shook her head. You don't just get to want, Adrian. You don't just get to walk back in after 6 years and expect me to open the door. His eyes softened. I'm not asking you to open the door. I'm asking you to let me knock until you're ready to answer. For the first time in years, Bella faltered. His words weren't the arrogant demands of the man she once knew. They were quiet, vulnerable, almost broken. And that scared her more than anything. That night, Bella lay awake, listening to the soft breaths of her children as they slept. She traced the outlines of their small hands curled against the blankets. Could she let Adrian in? Could she trust him not to break them the way he broke her? Her heart screamed no. Her soul whispered maybe. Across town, Adrian sat in his penthouse with a glass of untouched bourbon. For the first time in his life, success felt meaningless. Deals, contracts, accolades. None of it mattered compared to the thought of 2 children who shared his blood and the woman he'd never stopped loving. Tomorrow, he decided he would try again, not as a CEO, not as a man who always got his way, but as a father who wanted a chance. The knock came on a Saturday morning. Bella froze, spatula in hand, the smell of pancakes filling the small kitchen. She had known this day would come, had dreaded it, resisted it, rehearsed it in her mind 100 times. But nothing could prepare her for the sound of Adrian's knock, low and deliberate at her door. Elena peeked up from the table, her dark curls bouncing. "Mommy, who's that?" Bella swallowed hard. "Just finish your breakfast, sweetheart." But Elias was already sliding off his chair, quiet and observant as always. He moved to the door before Bella could stop him, his small fingers reaching for the knob. "Elias, wait." Too late. The door creaked open and there he was, Adrian Knight, framed in the morning light. His suit jacket traded for a simple gray sweater and dark jeans. He looked less like the polished CEO and more like the man Bella had once loved. But his eyes locked on the boy, standing before him. Elias tilted his head, studying the stranger with the same intense gaze Adrian himself carried. It was like looking into a mirror 5 years younger. Adrian's breath caught. "Hello," he said softly, his voice breaking without his permission. Bella stepped forward, her pulse racing. "Elias, this is Mr. Knight." Elias frowned, glancing between them. He didn't speak, but his silence said everything. And then Elena appeared, running to the door with pancake syrup on her cheek. "Who is it, Mommy?" she asked brightly. Her big brown eyes widened as she looked up at Adrian. For a moment she just stared. Then she smiled, unguarded and pure, the same smile Adrian had seen in the mirror as a boy. Adrian's knees went weak. He gripped the doorframe as though it was the only thing holding him upright. You're beautiful," he whispered. Bella's throat ached. She had fought so hard to keep this moment from happening. And yet, seeing him look at them, really look at them, something inside her cracked. "Kids," she said gently, her voice trembling. "Why don't you go finish your breakfast?" Elias hesitated, but Elena tugged his hand, dragging him back toward the table. They left Adrian standing in the doorway, his chest heaving as though he had run miles. Bella stepped outside, closing the door halfway behind her. "You shouldn't have come," she said, her voice tight. "I had to," Adrian replied, his eyes burning. "Bella, they're mine. I know it. I saw it the second they looked at me. Please don't shut me out of their lives." Bella's arms folded across her chest, a shield against the storm inside her. "It's not that simple. You can't just walk in here and claim them like a business deal." "I don't want a deal," Adrian said, his voice raw. "I want a chance. To know them, to be their father, to give them the love I never had." Bella's eyes softened, just for a moment, at the crack in his armor. But then the memories surged back. The nights she cried alone, the rejections, the abandonment. "I don't know if I can trust you," she whispered. Adrian stepped closer, lowering his voice so only she could hear. "Then let me prove it. Not with words, with time, with consistency, with everything I should have given you 6 years ago." Bella's breath shook. Behind the door, Elena's giggle rang out, Elias's quiet voice following. They were laughing at something silly, something small. Adrian's gaze softened. "Please, just let me start with breakfast." Bella blinked, startled. "Breakfast?" He smiled faintly, though his eyes were wet. "I can flip a pancake. Badly. But I can try." Against her better judgment, Bella felt the corner of her lips twitch. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't trust. But it was something. She opened the door wider. Come in. The small kitchen felt impossibly crowded with him inside, his tall frame filling the space that had always been just hers and the twins. Adrian rolled up his sleeves awkwardly, glancing at the pan. Elena beamed. "You're really tall," she announced. Adrian chuckled, his first laugh in years that felt real. "So are you, for your age." Elias studied him silently, then handed him a spoon. It was a test, Bella knew. Her son tested people without words. Adrian accepted it solemnly, as though it were a contract. And for the first time, Bella let herself imagine, just imagine, what it might mean if he stayed. Adrian Knight had built an empire from the ground up. He had stared down investors, competitors, and billion-dollar risks without blinking. But nothing in his life had prepared him for the sound of Elena asking, "Can you push me on the swing, Mr. Knight?" The park on the edge of East Vegas was nothing like the manicured golf clubs and private resorts he was used to. The swings creaked, the grass grew uneven, and the benches were weathered with age. Yet, as Adrian stood there in his crisp white shirt with his sleeves rolled up, he realized he had never been more nervous in his life. "Of course," he said, his deep voice almost cracking. Elena squealed as he gave her a gentle push, her curls bouncing in the sunlight. She laughed louder with each swing, her joy bursting into the air like fireworks. Adrian's chest ached. That sound, pure, unguarded laughter, was something he hadn't heard in years. He hadn't known he needed it until now. Elias, on the other hand, sat at the edge of the sandbox, sketching in his little notebook. His dark eyes flicked toward Adrian every few seconds, sharp and watchful, as if studying him. Adrian crouched down beside him. "What are you drawing?" Elias closed the notebook halfway, shielding it with his small hand. "The skyline," he said after a pause. Adrian smiled faintly. "You've got an eye for detail. That's talent." The boy studied him carefully, then went back to his sketch without another word. Adrian swallowed. This wasn't going to be easy. She had never seen Adrian like this before, stripped of his arrogance, awkward and unsure, but trying, really trying. It was dangerous, because it made her remember the man she had fallen in love with, the one who read poetry at midnight, who kissed her knuckles, as if she were something sacred. And it made her wonder if that man had ever truly disappeared. Later that afternoon, Adrian followed Bella back to her apartment. He carried Elena on his shoulders while Elias walked beside them, still quiet, but not as distant. Inside, Bella moved into the kitchen, setting out snacks. Adrian lingered near the twins' small table, watching as Elena pulled out her crayons. "Draw with me," she demanded, handing him a bright pink crayon. Adrian hesitated. His world had always been contracts and balance sheets, not coloring books. But he sat anyway, the chair far too small for his broad frame, and began to scribble clumsy shapes beside her. Elena giggled. "That doesn't look like a cat." Adrian laughed at himself. "That's because it's a very unique cat." Even Elias smirked, though he tried to hide it. Bella leaned against the counter, her lips pressing into a thin line. Seeing him there, coloring with their children as if he had been doing it forever, was almost too much. Her heart wanted to believe. Her mind reminded her of the years he wasn't there. When the twins finally went to bed, Bella and Adrian sat across from each other in the quiet living room. "You're good with them," Bella admitted reluctantly. Adrian's eyes softened. "I don't know what I'm doing, but I want to learn." She looked down at her hands. Wanting doesn't erase the past. "I know," he said gently. "I can't change what I did, but I can be here now, every day, for them, for you." Bella's chest tightened. "Don't make promises you can't keep, Adrian. I won't let you break them the way you broke me." Adrian leaned forward, his voice low and steady. "Then I'll spend the rest of my life proving I can keep them." For a long moment, neither spoke. The air between them hummed with old wounds and fragile hope. And for the first time, Bella didn't shut the door. The next week unfolded like a quiet test. Bella had expected Adrian to fade after that first weekend, to vanish the way he had years ago. She had braced herself for disappointment, rehearsed how she'd explain his absence to the twins. But he didn't vanish. On Monday morning, when she came downstairs juggling Elias's backpack and Elena's lunchbox, Adrian was already waiting outside her building. His sleek black car looked out of place in the modest neighborhood, but there he stood, sleeves rolled, tie loose, holding 2 paper bags. "Breakfast," he said simply, handing them over. Inside were fresh bagels, fruit cups, and little cartons of chocolate milk. Elena squealed with delight. Elias took his quietly, but Bella didn't miss the way he lingered near Adrian instead of rushing ahead. "Thank you," Bella murmured, wary but surprised. Adrian smiled faintly. "Get used to it. I'll be here every morning." He kept his word. On Tuesday, he drove them to school, making small talk about spelling tests and math homework. Elena peppered him with questions. "Do you have a dog? Do you know how to swim? Can you buy an ice cream truck?" Well, Elias just studied him, silent but thoughtful. On Wednesday, he showed up at Elias's soccer practice, standing at the sidelines in a crisp suit, cheering louder than anyone. When Elias scored his first goal, Adrian's shout echoed across the field, pride swelling in his chest. On Thursday, he sat cross-legged on Bella's living room floor, helping Elena glue glitter onto a poster for her class project. By the time they were done, both of them sparkled like walking disco balls. And on Friday night, after the twins went to bed, Bella found him still sitting at her kitchen table, his sleeves rolled, reviewing work documents by the faint light. "You don't have to stay this late," she told him. "No," he said quietly, "but I want to." By the weekend, even Elias's walls had started to crack. He sat beside Adrian at the park, handing him his notebook again. This time, he let him see the full sketch, a skyline dotted with stars. "It's beautiful," Adrian said, his throat tight. Elias looked up at him. "Do you really live in one of those tall buildings?" Adrian nodded. "The corner office. But it feels empty without people in it." Elias studied him a moment longer. Then in the smallest voice he asked, "Are you going to leave again?" The question hit harder than any boardroom betrayal. Adrian's eyes stung. He reached out, resting a hand gently on his son's shoulder. "No," he whispered, "not ever again." Elias didn't answer right away, but he didn't pull away either. For Adrian, that was everything. That night, Bella watched from her bedroom doorway as Adrian tucked Elena's blanket around her shoulders and switched off the lamp. He moved with a tenderness she had once thought him incapable of. When he stepped out, she met his eyes. "They're starting to trust you," she said. "I'll never give them a reason not to," he replied. Bella's chest tightened, because for the first time in 6 years, she almost believed him. The night was quiet. The twins had finally drifted to sleep after an evening of board games and laughter, their soft breaths filling the little apartment. Bella stood by the window, the city lights painting her face in silver. Her heart was a storm she couldn't name. For weeks now, Adrian had been there, showing up, staying late, proving himself in ways she never thought he would. And yet, the fear still lingered. Behind her, Adrian set down the empty mugs from their tea. His tie was loose, his hair slightly tousled, his entire presence softer than the man who once walked away from her. "You're quiet tonight," he said gently. Bella turned to him, her arms folded. "Because I don't know what to do with you." His brows furrowed. "What do you mean?" "You're here, every day, with them, with me. You've been consistent. And that terrifies me, Adrian. Because if this isn't real, if you disappear again," her voice cracked, "it won't just break me this time. It'll break them." Adrian stepped closer, his voice low but firm. "Bella, listen to me. The man who left you 6 years ago was a coward. I was drowning in my own ambition and pride, and I thought walking away was protecting you. I see now it only destroyed us. I will not make that mistake again." Her eyes burned with tears. How do I know you mean that? Adrian closed the space between them, his hands trembling as he reached for hers. Because every time Elena laughs, I hear the life I almost missed. Every time Elias looks at me, I see the boy I should have been raising. And every time I look at you, his voice faltered, I see the only woman I've ever loved. The one I never stopped loving. Bella's breath caught. She wanted to resist, to protect herself. But her heart betrayed her, racing, aching longing. Adrian. He cupped her face with both hands, his thumbs brushing away the tears she hadn't realized had fallen. Give me one more chance. Not for the empire, not for appearances, not even for them. For us. For what we were and what we could be again. Bella searched his eyes, looking for the man she once knew. And she saw him. Not perfect, not flawless, but human, changed. Slowly, painfully, she let the walls crumble. Yes, she whispered. One more chance. Adrian's lips parted in relief, and before she could second-guess it, he pulled her into his arms. The kiss was soft, trembling with years of regret and hope. For the first time in 6 years, she didn't feel abandoned. She felt found. The next morning, the twins padded into the kitchen to find their mother and father already there, side by side, cooking breakfast together. Are you staying for pancakes? Elena asked, her face hopeful. Adrian crouched down, smiling through damp eyes. I'm not just staying for pancakes, sweetheart. I'm staying for everything. Elias studied him carefully, then nodded once, his silent approval. Bella slid the plate of pancakes onto the table, her eyes meeting Adrian's across the small kitchen. For the first time, it didn't feel like her burden alone. It felt like home. That night, as Adrian tucked the twins into bed, Bella lingered by the doorway. She listened to Elena giggle at one of his silly bedtime stories, watched Elias curl closer under his blanket as Adrian smoothed his hair. And she realized the life she thought was lost forever had just begun again. Weeks later, the four of them stood together outside Adrian's penthouse, the skyline glittering behind them. Bella hesitated at the threshold, her old fears whispering. Adrian took her hand, steady and sure. This isn't just my home anymore, he told her. It's ours. She stepped inside, the twins racing ahead with laughter. And for the first time in years, Bella let herself believe in forever.